So you saw the questions. We're going to try to answer these questions today with my panelists. But first of all, I would like to welcome you, and I'm very happy to be here. It's so nice to look around and see so many people from different backgrounds. And that's exactly the world I would love to live in. So I would say in my different languages, I know Guten Morgen, good morning, Sabah al-Khair, and bonjour. And I would like to know, are there other languages that I didn't hear that I would like to hear? Pregunta. This was? So, other languages? So that's exactly it should be all together, coming together and to talk. And now I'm going to introduce my panelist. I'm very happy that she's joining us today. She's a Canadian journalist, author, and a human rights activist. Welcome, Sally Armstrong. A German journalist, filmmaker, and founder of Hawar. We're going to know more about that. Welcome, Düzen Tekkal. She's a professor of theoretical philosophy and member of the Swedish Academy from Sweden, Åsa Wikforss. He's a Palestinian journalist. He's the chairman of the Common Action Forum and former director general of Al Jazeera. Welcome, Wadah Khanfar. So we saw the questions, we know the panelists. Let's talk. Düzen. What community do you belong today to?
First of all, thank you very much for the invitation. It's a big pleasure to be here today with all of you. And I think I have more identities like one, because as a daughter of Kurdish Yazidi refugees and born and raised here in Germany, I have a German one, of course, a Yazidi one, also an Oriental one, I think, and northern one, because I was born and raised in Hanover. And
very northern?
Yeah, very northern, yeah, it's a kind of mentality.
Yeah.
And therefore I think I grow up with many challenges, but also many possibilities. And to ask the question what it means to be German nowadays is a very important one, because I think we are not used to ask the question, especially here in Germany. But how you see, we are a diverse society, which is more fast forward, I think, than our government. So I think there's a long way to go, and Canada could be a huge role model in many cases, and therefore I think many people are very afraid because of the part of being part of the society, but not handled like Germans. So what it means to be German nowadays is a very important question for me, but also a human being. So therefore I founded out an NGO like Hava Help, out of the ashes of genocide. This was my Yazidi identity, and a nationwide education initiative called German Dream, which is like breaking a taboo because of our German history, of course. And I'm very sure if I were a native German, that would be more problematical than to be a German like me today.
Okay. We know about your identity, different identities. Wadah, what do you stand for today?
For values that could bring all of us together. For something that the humanity is missing, and I'm scared that it is missing more with time. The idea of how could we navigate through this difficult transition which the humanity is going through, and establish a new narrative where me and you and everyone else could feel comfortable with the future, because everyone is capitalizing on fear of the future and fear of the recent crisis we are going through. I stand for that kind of concept. This is the idea of alliance that John spoke about, is actually could represent my major thought. We need that global alliance that could bring all of us together, but we should be bold about it. We should defend the future as we see it and not allow others to hijack it.
You already told me what should happen. I would like more to know, what are you standing for today
If
and
you want
defending?
to give me a label, basically.
No, I just
I'm
want to
a
understand.
Palestinian. I was born a Palestinian. I'm an Arab. I am a Muslim. But of course, I am an international citizen of this world, and I had the pleasure of living in many countries in the world, from South Africa, Nelson Mandela, up to Iraq and Afghanistan.
Do you feel somewhere rejected?
I think I am rejected not, of course, there are many people who reject me and hate me, and they would like to squeeze my neck as well because of...
Not for personal reasons, I'm meaning because of who you are.
Stand for. Once you speak about democracy and inclusion,
okay,
a lot of people are scared of that, and they would like to get rid of you. But in my opinion, you see, we belong to the majority that sometimes they are silent, but they need people to raise their voices so they could follow them. And unfortunately, this is missing in our paradigm.
Okay. Sally, we're listening and saying you agree with all what he said, and what do you stand for? What's the thing you say today? I am defending these values.
Well, first of all, I want to come back to the point about where you come from. I was born and raised in Quebec, the French part of Canada. I live in Ontario. I married someone from the West. And I think I feel kind of like the quintessential Canadian, except I need to bring in my career, which takes me elsewhere. I'm a journalist. I work in zones of conflict. But my beat is to find out what happens to women and girls wherever there's conflict. And that makes me feel, as you said, a citizen of the world. I think I understand where people are coming from, and a lot of them wind up in Canada. And I think we have a marvelous experiment in Canada of what can happen. Not that we're perfect, that's for sure, but when you meet people, as you and I do in zones of conflict, and you find out what happened to them is not all that different to what happened to you. And I think together we're so much stronger.
If I listen to Düzen, she has different identities. Do you have also different identities? Or because you were born in a country, your parents are from the same country, is it different?
No, my father does not come from Canada. And I think for me that's a fortunate thing that my identity is multifaceted, and I'm very comfortable with that. I don't feel that I'm from only one part of my country, and I feel very comfortable, for example, with the Yazidis, who I got to know when I spent several years covering what was happening to them, and then they came to Canada, and I got to know them again. So I don't feel that I'm fragmented.
Okay. Åsa, we heard today, when we listened to the last half an hour, we heard fear, division, nationalism, rejection. What's happening? Is there a division from your theoretical point of view? What's happening? Could you tell us?
Yes, I mean, first of all, I'm a Swede. That's it. But I'm a very worried Swede right now. Because Sweden, for the longest time, Sweden didn't even have a right-wing populist party at all, whereas in other countries it's always been bubbling a bit. But now we have quite a far-right nationalist populist party that takes a quarter of the population votes of the quarter of the population. That's 25% in Sweden, and this has happened in a few years. So I'm extremely worried and angry, and I do believe there is a very concerted effort to use the new technology to spread disinformation, to exploit fear. I think the exploitation of fear is the greatest danger in the sort of propaganda that we see now. It's very well done, it's very skilled, and it really works. And I think that in Sweden, the explanation of why we moved from having no right-wing party to 25% of the population, it's a multi-factor explanation, but the role that disinformation has played in this and the exploitation of fear is huge.
Okay, we have a disinformation, so there's a kind of agreement, there's something going on. And now I would like to have examples of everyday life. Why should we worry?
Mm-hmm. So what do you mean by that?
Like, we know there's fear, we understood it. There's a feeling that there's something on. You have nationalism. You have people who are not feeling good in their daily lives. And I want now to know, why is it like this?
I think the fact that Germany as second popular country in the world for being part of the Society for Refugees, and the fact that we didn't announce that, we didn't accept that and realize that, of course, means that other people will come instead of that when we don't give the answers as middle of society, for example. And my first book, which I wrote, called Germany in Danger, Why We Have to Fight for Our Values. And I talked about the evil twins. On the one hand, right-wing racism, on the other hand, religious extremism, and Oriental patriarchal way of thinking, not just in Islamic structures, also in my own culture, the Yazidi one. So my fight was always a fight of being free. So I loved very much what you said, the alliance against fear is something which is so important, and I want to be example for being part of reacting, not just waiting. And I think that was a long waiting the last 20 years. Even today, we don't call ourselves immigration country. We don't have a ministry for migration subjects in the way how we need it. And therefore, when we, as a middle of society, don't give the answers, other people will do that instead of us. And I think this is the reason, for example, for a party like AfD, who is a right-wing
party in Germany,
in the German parliament, that don't means that they are so powerful. It's about our weakness here in Western to describe our challenges, our problems, but also our vision where we want to be. And I think this is exactly the lesson which we have together to make clear what we are stand for, and what we are against. And this is something which is very important, I think.
What we stand for, we agreed on, but there's the other side that people are, like in Sweden 25%, and the AfD in Germany is also on the rise in different Europe countries. Wadah, if you put yourself on the other side, why are people rejecting, afraid of someone who says, let's live together, let's be diverse, let's accept each other, let's be tolerant?
The narrative that has been promoted by those who existed in the Western societies for a long time, but they have found the opportunity and the pretext in the refugees issue to inflate it through social media and to become a major threat and fear. This narrative was not properly countered by those who have other liberal values and ideas. It means we concentrated much on the human element by saying, oh my God, the Syrians are dying, let us take them, it's very bad. It's not only that. In my opinion, the narrative should include the following. A, what do we stand for as a nation? Because the right-wing philosophy in the West is not only about migration story. It starts about migration, but tomorrow it will end about subdividing the community itself in sub-identities. Second, it's about pragmatism. These refugees, I am an Arab living in the Middle East. I covered all the crises that's happening in Syria and Iraq and everywhere else. I am very sad that the Yazidis are leaving Iraq. I am very sad that the Syrians are leaving Syria. They are skilled, they are clever, they are creative, they have a fresh population, they are young, going to societies in the West that lack that kind of element in some of these countries because of the population decline and many other things. We look at them as an opportunity, but we sometimes frame it indifferently. Pragmatically speaking, we need to be aggressive on promoting a new narrative that makes from these people who are coming to our societies as an opportunity. This is how the modern world was built. This is how America was built and Canada was built and every civilized nation in the West was built through this kind of migration and accepting people to be part of the economy and part of the culture and so on and so forth. We need to be vocal. We shouldn't be apologetic. We should not only have the human element in our mind when we speak to the media, yes, and we should speak about long-term investment where the children and the grandchildren of these people who were forced to join us will become the new scientists and the new builders and the new politicians who will build the societies.
He said there's someone who's not doing enough who could change the narrative. Who is not doing enough today to change the narrative?
Well, you know, first of all, I want to applaud what you said, because I think Canada is an example of that. We've had various sets of migration, of refugees. I'm thinking of the boat people from Vietnam who came to Canada. And now, all these years later, people are able to do extensive studies on the result of that group arriving. And it's been enormously successful. And we're not often in a position to reflect back and say, look what they brought, look what they did, and now they're us. So who's not speaking up? You know, I think there's a very plain part of this narrative that hardly ever gets mentioned. When people begin to speak in public about things that prior to this were unacceptable, it was unacceptable to be that rude in public about another person or another ethnicity. We didn't censor them. We didn't shut them down right at the beginning.
Who are we?
I can name the mayor of Toronto from some years back began saying things in public that shocked us, and we would whisper behind our hands and say, did you hear what he just said? But nobody confronted him immediately to say, we don't accept what you're saying about people who come from away or people who aren't your idea of who should be living in Toronto. And I think a lot of that has gone on around the world. It's certainly going on in America, that people are not shutting down those who hold a large audience and speak in racist, xenophobic, misogynist styles. And I think had we shut it down early, we would have made the point we're now trying to make later. Mm-hmm. Because I think that exists in people. And those people getting away with the mayor or the president or somebody saying these things in public allows that conversation to continue.
Åsa, we should do more. Why we got more? Why we're not doing more? And then I would like to know from you is why it's getting more acceptable for people to be rude.
Well, I mean, I mentioned before this litter theory about public conversation, which is the idea, like if you allow littering in the park to go on, you leave the garbage there, then someone else comes and think, oh, well, I can litter too, it's kind of dirty here, and then before you know it, the park is going to be a dump. And that can happen to public discourse as well. And I think it's quite right that once we start talking this way, things get moved in a direction, which is kind of nasty. And of course, social media is extraordinarily well suited to that, because social media is all about emotion. It's all about using, saying anything without having to personally face a person. Face-to-face conversation is much harder to be hateful and use this kind of language. But on social media, it works perfectly well because you're not facing anyone and you're sitting there in your anger. So some public figures moving the goalposts, allowing for this littering of public discourse in combination with how social media just works. We don't face each other. We can throw out our hatred there. This is pushing things in a certain way. And I want to say, you started saying, what's the fear here? The fear, of course, is we get nasty societies, but it's worse than that, because the fear is that we will dismantle democracy, because that ultimately is the goal of some of these people. They want to sow enough hatred and enough division in a society so that people will allow a dismantling of certain, rights, like freedoms and rights that a democracy has, and a dismantling of important public institutions. Like now, public service in Sweden is under attack. And that is often how it starts when you dismantle a democracy. So I think the fears here are not just for, unhappy, divisive societies. It's ultimately greater fears than that. Yeah.
I'll open the discussion with the audience. I would like to know your experience. What's changing? what's your daily experience? And if no one is gonna raise his or her hand, then I'm gonna just pick someone. Oh, there's someone. I hope I can. Are you ready? Perfect.
Can you hear me?
Yes, just a bit closer and then.
I will just introduce myself first. My name is Imran Khan. I'm from Pakistan, but I immigrated to Germany 3 years ago. I work for an international non-profit called Skadistan. We work for girls' education, combining sports to development and education. So we work in Afghanistan, Cambodia, and South Africa. Before coming to Germany, I was pretty much living in a bubble because I was in a comfort zone with my own people. We also had a lot of Afghan refugees, so the debates were always there. I was always critical of my government as well. But when I became immigrant, I was put in the same box which I was criticizing back home. People were looking at me somehow that I'm someone who is here for some alter motives or goals. So I was not accepted in the society as much as I can. So referring to your question, that what we can see right now is that I can see a lot of anger in people. I can see a lot of hate, which is growing. And I think this hate is day to day. I think there's a lot of right-wingers who roam around freely and who express their feelings so freely. And people like us, we are always scared what to negotiate, what to talk, because it's very difficult to negotiate when you really come and start living in a country which you're not being born there, and you're a bit different thinking-wise and also your skin color.
Okay. Anyone would like to comment on that?
What was his question?
He didn't have a direct question, he just has a comment. We already, okay. We have here and we have here too.
Can you repeat your question in more clear?
Can you share your experience? What is changing today in society from your own perspective?
Okay.
Point of view.
I'm Qais. I'm coming from Afghanistan. Just as very briefly, I must say that in terms of identity, in terms of nationality, I think, on my personal opinion, I belong to no one, yet I belong to everyone. And that is because if I say I'm from this identity, I distinguish myself from the rest of you. But if I say I belong to all of you, I betrayed my own national identity. So I don't know exactly. I've been rejected a couple of times from my own people, from my own tribe, because from a country I'm coming, we have different ethnicities, tribes, just because I can't speak the language in a more grammatical way. So, but then I approach other people, I approach different religions, I approach different identities. I found peace in every one of them. But at the end, I think we share one identity, and that's humanity. And what is changing is the speed of globalization that we had in the past 20 to 30 years. Many people were not ready for this sort of globalization, and now they're facing like a fear that we should defend our identities, and that arises the populist movements. Yeah, someone can be populist, and they have the right to, because they were not ready for this globalization. They should be educated to, and they should be globalized. By what means? By exchange of conversation, by exchange of young students should travel abroad, meet people, not just on a terms of languages or cultures, but go seek their religions, speak to them, and go live with them for a day. That's how it changes society. But if we talk today and we go out and have our own minds with our own thoughts, that's not changing. Go talk to each other, share who you are truly, be honest. And that's the fear, like if I'm being honest, people will have a label on me. That's the one biggest problem I've seen, labeling people for what they hold. Doesn't matter if you're conservative, far left, left, center right, far right. Be expressive, that's it.
What is if someone is rejecting you? Like, you're open, you're a humanist, you want to talk to people, you want to have an exchange, you'll be tolerant, you say I'm part of it, but they say, no, go back home.
Believe in yourself. Believe whether if you're right or not. If you believe that you're right, you're right.
Okay.
Can I? Yeah, I think this is beautiful. I think this is a really important point. I worry about too much talk about identity, and we should take a lesson from social psychology, which is that you can put people together randomly. You can put people red shirts and blue shirts, and within 5 minutes you can get these groups to hate each other. So the more we focus on group identity, differences in group identity, the worse things get. There's nothing wrong with having identities, but we have many identities. And like you say, and we know also from research that if you need to reach across, well, there really is a difference in opinion and values. In order to reach across, the first thing you need to do is find a common group identity. And there's always one. There's always one. At least we're both human beings. So one needs to go in that direction. I think it's very, very wise what you're saying.
Thanks so much.
Yes, please.
Hello, do you hear me? I'm Rachel, I'm from Switzerland, and I'm an artist, and I'm very open, and I'm idealist, and I am welcoming. That's what I think who I am. And I'm a social artist, and I was at the luck to work in Berlin, like everybody. I think there's an oversupply of art and communication in big cities. And one time I was forced to work a little bit outside of Berlin, in Gransee, in the countryside, where there's a lot of unemployed people who are tendency to the right-wing movement. And I was forced to do 10 months of theater with them every day. And they hated me because I am the theater woman from Switzerland, from Berlin. What does she want to do with us? And they were forced to work with me because they were in the job center. And if they wouldn't have been with me, they would have get no money. So we were forced to work with each other, and I hated them because they are afraid of new people. There was just a refugee home opened just 5 years ago, where the movement was very strong. So there was in a little town opening a refugee home, and they were so afraid of these new people coming. And I, as an idealist, thought, let me work with everything, like with the Syrian people coming there in this little town, and those victims, they were all like never read a book, and very racist, and I hated them, and I was such a racist against them because they were ugly. The fear of them, of the others, made them ugly, and I hated this ugliness.
I'm really excited to know how the story ends.
And I just want to say that if we have an oversupply of art and communication here, and sometimes I feel that we are preaching for ourselves who are already converted. And I'm thinking how much braveness it takes to then really do this with the stranger. You have to really look in the mirror.
But how did the story end? Did you said you hated them, they hated you? Was there love?
Sorry, yes, the key point. I screamed at them one day and I said, I can never go back again. I quit my job. I was shaking, and my ex-husband told me, go there and
talk to them.
Entschuldige dich. Was heißt das?
Apologize.
Say sorry. And I went there to this racist idiots, and I said, from my heart, I'm sorry. And I've missed my point. I had to love them in order to make theater, to make the performance. I forgot my point. I had to love them. I was forced to love them, and it was amazing.
It worked at the end?
Of course, it was amazing. And
yeah! That's a good end, because, with so much hate, to end with love is nice. Please.
Thank you very much for that story. I would like to add something. I'm Judith Albrecht. I'm a social anthropologist. I'm here with the network of engaged anthropologists, and I would like to make 3 points. I think we all can talk about stories of frustration and stories of success, and I would like to maybe emphasize on the shifting point here. Because I can say with our network, we are doing amazing work on a very informal level. It's community-based, it's multilingual. But then I also want to emphasize on the fact you mentioned, like, where is the change happening? And the change is happening very different in very different contexts. If you're in Berlin, it's different than if you are going to Cottbus or Chemnitz, where I also work. And you see, like, different ways of how people talk. And our main concern as social anthropologists right now is that we have the feeling we cannot convince people with facts. You know, like fear and racism is an ideology, and fear is on a very emotional level. And we are trying to figure out, in a way, how to talk to people who have these fears, because they are not based on certain facts. I can throw at them facts and statistics and all these numbers you mentioned, for example, and they would, that doesn't make any difference. So it has something to do with experiences. Obviously, it's experience, it's encounter, it's going into relationships. And now I would like to add another point, is that I have the feeling that...
Is it okay if she comments on the first point, because she would like to comment on the first point, okay, and then they will go to the second point, please.
Well, this is the challenge, and this is what is described as fact resistance, right? What we know in that situation is that more information is not going to help. We also know that anger and frustration is not going to help. And so there's quite a bit of experimental work being done in this. And one thing that's clear is what you need to do in that situation is create a situation of respect and trust. Now that's really hard, but that's an emotional challenge that one needs to carry with one. So one can't just say, obviously this is how it is, look at these statistics. You have to find a situation of trust and respect. And to do that, again, you need to find some common ground. Some common ground when it comes to beliefs. There's something that you both believe about the world, but also common ground when it comes to group belonging. And like I said before, there's always something we have in common. It's a very difficult challenge, but it is an emotional challenge, and one needs to keep that in mind, and just bringing in more facts is not going to help.
Thank you. So, and my last point would be, if it's about trust relationship and going into this long-term, experience, I have the feeling that institutions don't resonate, like my university doesn't resonate to the community project. Libraries we are working, they are just doing their daily business. And this is very contextualized by a neoliberal force. Everybody is like, oh yeah, being political solidarity is good, but you have to write your articles, you have to publish, you have to go into career. And the changing point and the threatening point is that if academia and all these, and libraries and educational institutions, I'm asking myself, how can they learn from this community-based experiences we make? Because we offer something they need. And, we have seminars at the university which were shut down by AfD or neo-Nazis about transgender. People just rushed in and they closed the seminar. And I'm just, and this happens. We have bomb threats at universities because students won't allow somebody from the AfD talking. I'm talking about that, and that's threatening, and I'm just surprised how little active universities become in our days, and I'm part of it, and we are doing something, but somehow the institution is very, very slow and doesn't resonate, and that would be like the discussion point of my day. How do institutions here in Germany learn from this beautiful community-based experiences? Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'll get the last input from the audience and then back to discussion, and again we go back, please.
Yes, hi. So my name is Marilena. I'm half Greek, half Swiss. Been living in Berlin, I think, since '98 and paying my taxes here. And I have 2 points to make.
Which is very important.
It is very important, because we talk about inclusion here, and I find, I don't want to apply for the German citizenship. I think 2 are enough. However, I can't vote in Greece because I have to be physically present in Greece to vote. I can vote in Switzerland, but I find it a little bit, I do actually vote in Switzerland, because otherwise I'd be completely politik verdrossen, alienated from politics. But I don't live there, so I don't really know what's going on. But I can't vote in Berlin, so I do feel a little bit discriminated in the sense that I cannot take part in the political life. And I know I can vote in the communal votes, but I mean, it's not that important in that sense, in forming. So I think also for people who have come and emigrated here and have come as refugees, migrants, perhaps a consideration of giving them some kind of voting rights without necessarily starting with a citizenship. From the moment they're paying taxes, at least, you know, they are contributing to the society fiscally, which is something people want, but they're not really politically forming, so we're not including them in that sense. Like, I don't feel that included. And I do feel privileged by having two nationalities, so I don't feel not... Okay, so, and my last point is that I find, and I really appreciate fora like this, but I find sometimes we forget the other side, the AfD of these people. Like, very often we talk, and I can imagine, I don't know, but I can imagine that most of us here are of the same opinion. I would have loved to talk to somebody who is of the other opinion, who has the fears, to understand better, and I don't really know how to do that. Because, yeah, in social media, often we just disregard those people. So they used to be our Facebook friends, and then we stop being friends with them. Why? We need to engage in that dialogue, and it's sometimes very difficult to find them, especially in person. Thank you. Sorry.
Thank you so much. Social media was mentioned more than one time. Is it today leading to, we heard more experience leading to more division, or what about bringing people together, connecting people together, being able to campaign internationally?
I think social media could use in a wrong or bad way, or also in a good way, like social media for good. So what is main important for us as social entrepreneurs, human rights activists with multi-religious projects is to bring the experiences which we are making offline, online. So to talk about what we have in common on the one hand, but also who follows me on Twitter, for example, knows
I follow you.
Yeah, that I could be that I could be very hard in the enemies of our values, for example. So I think we have to do both of it, to talk about problems, but also to talk about possibilities. And I think to be frustrated, and this is, I think, a huge problem in our society, also with the young generation, means that they don't have enough voice or possibilities. This is our experience. So what we try to do is to listen to them, to understand them, and to bring them into power. So this is, for example, something which we want to share, that we by ourselves have to take our place to be part of power, because no one is waiting for us. Power means sometimes also that the people are like having fear because they don't want to share something with you. And this is my personal experience as a woman, as an agent of change in Iraq, in Syria. We have a women empowerment center for Yazidi women who were in the hands of ISIS, but also for Muslim women and Christian women. And the fact that we said as Yazidi women, we want a multi-religious women empowerment center means a lot of trouble with my own community.
Yes.
And therefore I think, to be honest, nowadays it's very difficult to wake up as a human rights activist and to talk about religion, identity, women's rights, and but I think this is the only choice which we have, and we have to go on with that.
Since I follow you on Twitter, and I know you try also to be critical when it comes, I would allow myself to say, to your own community. You're critical when it comes to migrants or refugees who come to Germany or who fled to Germany, and some of them, we cannot generalize, don't follow or don't adapt to some rules. So what's the role of the own community in this? Not to give any facts, what she mentioned for the other side, to use it.
I think we have, all of us have a responsibility, of course, and this is, being a part of the society, but also, fighting for a tolerant, peaceful world. And that means, on the other hand, that we have to talk about challenges which are happening, for example. And I think this is so important for all of the other people who came from other countries to us, who have the deep wish to be part of the society, so as he was talking about it. And therefore, I think we have to make differences. So not all human being is equal. I know that we want that to achieve, but of course we have some kind of refugees who came here who was not standing on the right side of our values. And I think the biggest problem that is for the community which they are from. And for example, to be critical, in my opinion, means to first of all be critical with your own community. And for example, the life which I have today, being part of society, being, how can I describe it? I have my own job, earn my own money, things like that, was not that normal in my family. So I was born and raised up in a Kurdish Yazidi family with traditions, with rules. I came from a collective, relational culture where the fact of being individual or free is not that thing to achieve. It's more like, what can you do for your community? What can you do for your mother, for your father, for your uncles, for the culture? Of course, this is a big difference. So our fight for, especially for me and my 10 siblings, we are 7 girls at home, was a fight of being ourselves, of being free. And I think this was something which made us so powerful. And this is something why we are fighting against fearness, because we know exactly how it feels.
Mm-hmm. Nationalist, community, you said what should happen sometimes within a community. What's the role of communities who are rejected? Let's take an example, who are living in Europe and being rejected because according to the other side, that's what she said, which are not today here, what is their role? What should they do?
So I would say the following. Why humans become racist? This is very important. Social media has been a tool, but we did not have social media in 1933. When we assumed, for example, someone stood up and said, we are superior. We did not have it in Italy. We didn't have in 1937 when the Germans, when Japan invaded Southeast Asia because they are superior. The concept is there are objective reasons why people really become racist. Economic crisis sometimes, we had it in the Great Depression at the beginning of last century. Sometimes the collapse of political order, we have it everywhere around us, especially the international world order. Sometimes the uncertainty about the future and the fear of the future. We have that right now because we are moving into the 4th industrial revolution where everything, the patterns of work, the patterns of structure, of power is collapsing. Everything is in
But if we look to Germany, economically, it's doing very good.
Exactly. The economy.
So why is there still people rejecting?
So the seeds exist in our societies, but normally they come into the center when there is this kind of form of transition. At this stage, in my opinion, we are going through a perfect Valhalla for racism. We have economic crisis internationally, in Europe in particular. We have collapse of political orders everywhere, especially the world order. After the Cold War, we have lost the balance that we existed. Now we are moving into something else. We don't know exactly what is it. Is it a war between China, economic war between China and America? It is a new polar system or whatever. The third, we have uncertainty about our future. Economy of today is not the economy of tomorrow. I don't know exactly what job is going to survive, what job is not going to survive. Even the human structure of family, the social structure of the family is replaced by something new. The patterns of communication are changing. This is why we stick to the old. We are scared of the future. The new will be born, and the old doesn't want to die. This is why most of us who are scared are actually sticking to our nationalism. But this is not sustainable. This is the good news about it. Years from now, we will look back and say, you remember when someone was saying this? Because the trend of history right now is towards integration. It is towards international connection. It's towards this pool of resources from across the world defining the patterns of socialism, the patterns of economy that the world is going to see. So the concept of me unique because of my identity will not survive the future of a transition that the humanity is going through. This is why, if I am living in the West, really, and I would like to survive this, I will concentrate on my education. As you said perfectly, I need to be confident about my future. I need to be unique about what I can deliver to the society, prove to my neighbors and to everyone else that I am adding value, and be patient. It will get worse before it gets better. Be patient. This will change. But tomorrow I could see in every capital in the West that the people who will rule, who will dominate many sectors of creativity, of technology, even economy, are going to be the offspring of migrants and refugees of today. So we need to go through this tough time. We need to develop the alliance that John spoke about. We need to stand up, polish our narrative, be brave about it, because we are not fighting for the refugees. We are fighting for the future of our societies ourselves. And I think we will survive.
It was a speech.
Thank you very much.
I felt like, okay, but you're saying we have to go through this hard time, as if it's a fact, it will happen. Within 10 years, we'll look back, it's already decided. But Sally, how can we prevent this to happen again, to go again through hard time, people being rejected, killed, etc.?
Well, to combine it, that you were talking about social media and the huge role this is playing, and I agree with you that it is the offspring that will be the better story. But one of the things...
But better story later, not now.
Later. But now, one of the things we need to do immediately is correct the facts. I mean, it was the American Isaac Asimov, I think, who said it best. He said, we have a problem in that, especially with social media, there's the view that my ignorance is every bit as good as your intelligence. And it's not. You have to get the facts. And if the facts are wrong, you are going to poison the whole circle. And today, misinformation is winning. People can say whatever they like. And because of that, do we believe anybody? I mean, whatever comment is thrown out there from a very reliable source, we're starting to say, well, is that true? If he lied, is she lying? And social media, we don't want to police social media. We love the fact that all of a sudden all of us are scientists and journalists and authors, but there's way too much misinformation being sent out there and absorbed. And that has to be corrected.
Sure.
Yeah, sure.
Yes, yes, indeed. It's epistemic warfare. I mean, that is what's going on now. And we shouldn't, we should just face that. And as to the point about the role of social media, of course, the seeds of racism are in our psychology. I mean, tribal thinking, that's in our psychology. It has evolutionary value. It's not so strange. We know that. Of course, these things have happened before. They happened in the 30s. We didn't have social media. We did have a new means of communication, which was radio, which was immediately exploited for the purposes of propaganda, right? But the difference between then and now is that now we've had stable democracies in a number of countries for decades and decades, where these values and the value pluralism and the respect and all that has really become quite solid. Now, if you're going to dismantle those kinds of democracies, you need to do a lot more than you needed to do in the early 30s, when the democracies were very young and very unstable. To dismantle today's democracies, as has been happening in Hungary, what is happening in Poland, what is now a threat in several countries in Europe, look at the US, what's going to happen there. You need propaganda, you need disinformation. And disinformation at this point is winning. And the reason it's winning is what you're talking about, is that they're working so hard to just create confusion and sow doubt. What do I really know? Who can I trust? Sowing doubt and distrust when it comes to formally trusted sources of information, like serious journalism or universities or the courts. Sowing distrust about these things is crucial to dismantling a democracy that has functioned for decades. So disinformation is a huge problem.
Mm-hmm. And Jaafar, there is one just last remark. Don't you, I mean, the elephant in the room is a lot of these bad ideas exist in the corners of dark societies and dark corners of the society. But when they are uttered from a podium, written on it, the President of the United States of America,
Well, sure.
it takes a different dynamics.
Absolutely.
It has gained that kind of legitimacy between two brackets amongst people to circulate it in mainstream. It used to exist, but now it is mainstream. We have politicians, it serves their cause to become racist, to lie, to have fake news, to adopt every kind of things. And suddenly, people started to come out and express their views publicly.
And I mean, to say that the media is the enemy of the people, what a brilliant way to knock off any fact you don't want applied to yourself.
That's what you do.
And it worked.
Yeah.
It worked.
Well, that's an old strategy. It goes back to the tobacco companies in the 1960s. They sow doubt. That's what you do when facts are not the way you like them. You sow doubt on the trust, on the source. Whether it's academia or whether it's journalism, that's what Trump does, and that's what a number of leaders do. That's what Putin does. That's how you do it.
Düzen, what's their interest so we have misinformation?
I think, especially in social media, if you talk about problems and fake news, it's easier. And all of the people who are in conversation, they are not interested in discussion. It's just to say what they want to say to their own audience. So therefore, as you saw it on Twitter, it's always a discussion between are you Nazi or are you good Mensch? And the fact that good Mensch is a word, using as a word as being a bad person when you stay on the side of humanity, I think shows exactly what the problem is, which we have nowadays. And therefore, I think it's very important not just to describe the problems. It's like solutions, and especially social media is so powerful, and we are, as human rights activists, very, very active in social media, and that was one of the reasons why we became so much power, because first of all, no one was interested in the cases which we did, because it was too sad, it was too far away, it was too deep, but now there is a change, so I think we have to concentrate ourselves of this kind of power and change and be against fake news and tell the truth. We also can use the camera, be clear and say what is going on, but that means a lot of self-confidence, of course.
We'll go to the last question, which is how to do it on an education level, on a low level, institution level, and individual level. But before that, I would like to hear some voices from the audience. What are you doing on your own experience to defend values of democracy and...
Over there.
Sorry.
Oh.
Please. We have another one. Where is the other one?
Up there.
No, we have the... okay.
My name is Friedel Grutzmach, and I'm here with Givat Haviva Germany. Givat Haviva is doing a very good job in Israel, bringing Israeli Jews and Israeli Palestinians together. But what I wanted to say about Germany, what hasn't been raised up to now is the question that most people you talk to in Germany are very disillusioned and have very bad experience about politics. Politicians are corrupt, they don't do their job, everything lasts is much too long, and so I think this is very difficult and very dangerous that politicians from the low level to the highest level don't have any good, don't have a good reputation any longer, and it's very easy to always say everything is the politics and they are doing everything wrong and nobody is kind of speaking up, and it's difficult to talk about good things. It's difficult for the media too. Media, we learned that only bad news are good news. I think we have to change that. We have to talk more about good things. We have to talk more about things that succeed, more about politicians who do a good job. And I don't know how media can change that, but I think this is one point that needs to be raised.
We have 3 journalists on our panel.
Yeah, unfortunately, the nature of media, the mainstream, what bleeds leads. I mean, this has been our major dilemma for the last few decades. So a war is a very lucrative story. As a war correspondent, and I think we share the same views this morning, This is unfortunately, media concentrate on what is extraordinary, what is not something that is normal in your life. And that mostly is negative in perception rather than positive. Now,
but is it negative or is it reality?
it is reality in its extreme form, I would say. Because what is fantastic and lovely and magnificent might not form headline. It might become a backstage story. It might be a nice feature story that by the end of your news bulletin you throw it away. But I would like to say something else. Mainstream media right now is engaged to a large extent with populism as well, because this is the problem. I argue that if we are professionally tackling the issues, even of confrontations and conflicts, that's fine. But I'm scared of the fact that mainstream news outlets are become populist as social media is, and therefore they are engaged in fights and battles. If you would like really to know what's happening in the United States of America, you can't really figure out from watching CNN or Fox, because each one of them will adopt a different alternative theory. I can't see that balanced reporting, objective one that will be, introducing to me facts and check the facts. Unfortunately, that's the dilemma of media of today. I love 10 years ago when we had much more balanced outlets, and 15 years ago when we were able to sit in front of a TV and trust the news reporter or trust the news on our screens.
It was in your hands for some years, so you were head of Al Jazeera.
Yeah, this is why I'm saying so.
Exactly, you were, so now you can say, please.
Yeah, I'm actually, you've just touched on the points that I've been really thinking about. My name is Jessica J. Lee. I'm an author. I'm a nature writer, specifically British, Canadian, Taiwanese. I live here in Berlin. In my work, I run a journal that publishes nature writing by writers of color because there has historically been a lack of attention to voices in environment, for example, from diverse populations. So we aim to address that balance. But I think one of the things that we've come up against is this issue of platforms very often. There's a lot of platform given to conflict. There's a lot of platform given to debate. And I think from my standpoint in my work, I'm no longer going to give oxygen to a debate that questions our right to exist when we already are here doing the work. I think, in terms of what the media can offer, in terms of how we can create community amongst ourselves, it's this question of creating space and lifting each other up rather than sort of, I guess, pulling it apart. I just looked at the CBC today, and the headline story is it's a Q&A with industry bosses about, pipeline protest disruptions, not a Q&A with activists on the ground, not a Q&A with hereditary chiefs. These are things that we need to ask why that narrative of conflict and which voices are being platformed. So in my particular niche and the work I work in, we hear a lot of talk about a lack of diversity in publishing, and never do those articles actually list the people who are doing the work, who are writing the books that need to be lifted up. They just talk about the problem, essentially.
Thank you.
I didn't get what she said. What did she say?
Good morning. My name is Sanna from the Do School, and I'm an Estonian woman who's lived here for a couple of years now. And Estonia is often talked about as a model country of, let's say, rising up from the ashes after the fall of the Soviet Union. And I think Estonia is also an important place for a conversation about how multiculturalism has been used as a vehicle to introduce neoliberal policies. And I think this has sown, at least in Estonia, a lot of mistrust in economically disenfranchised communities with the discourse of multiculturalism. I think poverty and classism has meant that many people have been removed from the kind of positive realities of what it means to be able to be mobile and to be able to meet people from different countries. A great example of that perhaps would be, I grew up in an SOS Kinderdorf, or a children's village, where even though we have a large Russian minority, within that Kinderdorf we would have many more Russian kids there than Estonian kids, since the amount of stateless Russian people in Estonia is very high. And amongst those youth living there with very few opportunities and very little money, the amount of racism within those disenfranchised communities would also be higher. So I would say that classism within this conversation about diversity needs to play a role.
Thank you. Okay. This side, we didn't have anyone from this side, okay.
I guess I very much agree with, was it Jenny? What you said about giving migrant people their own platform, because often within the media, these stories are very much appropriated and taken and utilized in order to perhaps advance careers, but also to make it into a populist notion of what is the narrative of migrants. And I think what is really important is like who is telling these stories and who is given the platform and who is expected to tell a particular narrative, and why is it that it's always that the ones who are making a difference within the societies that they have chosen to live within have to do something amazing, have to do, I mean, is it Sally, you said before, it's like with the Vietnamese community, I'm Australian, Vietnamese, Thai, and Chinese, so I'm a mix of different heritages. My family are refugees, but also migrants who came with papers. So I come from a lot of different communities, and we look at like, well, you said you don't feel fragmented, but the people who do have multiple identities don't feel fragmented either. We're a whole people, we're just diverse and we're rich. And this is something that is really important that migrants need to feel, rather than think that they are less of a person because they are so diverse and complex. And this is something that I think with globalization, we're in a particular moment where communities themselves need to figure out what it is that they require, what it is they need to heal, and also empower themselves, rather than experts telling them what we need, and the media saying this is what we need to do. Because as we know, everything is much more complex, everyone is on their own journey. We cannot say that we have all the answers, no one here has all the answers, and I'm sure we're all aware of that. But I think what we need to do is start asking more questions and giving more resources to people who are asking the questions and providing the platforms. I'm starting a new project called Migration, #Migration, maybe some of you have seen it. It's utilizing social media in order to give migrants platforms to tell their own stories in their own words, in their own languages, and also in different forms. And this is something that I think that is really important, rather than people who are in very privileged positions to do it for them. We're not voiceless, we just need the mic passed to us.
Good morning.
Just for the audience, if you go more solution-oriented, what do you do? What's the solution according to your point of view?
Okay, good morning. I'm Ihab, I'm from Syria. I'm here in Germany from 5 years, trying to integrate, to be part of this community. The first thing I need to belong, because it's difficult to think about I can belong back to my country. The responsibility I get here, in my experience about what I need to do to be part of this community, to find for myself a space here. It was in 2 points. The first point about me, what I need to do from my integration in this community, in this society, in the politics, in the media. Exactly how you do, Jaafar, your participation in media to raise our voice, to say exactly what the right voice of refugee, what the challenge they face. But also from the other side, for the society, the community, how they are able to give us the opportunity to belong here, to open the doors for us, to be more welcome for our ideas, to be more welcome for our experience, to believe in our experience and give us the opportunity to present this experience, to give us the platform where we can speak. The challenge, it's very, very difficult. It's not easy to solve, but this can be together between us as a newcomer and refugee and community as well. In my experience, when I try to solve this, how I can be part of this, like when we are able to participate in the society and to try to present our idea, to present our challenge, to present our news from us to the German society directly, and to not give the media the weight and the possibility to present the bad news about us. Here can our experience speak about what we did. Like when we try to organize a different project can show our experience, show our work here in Germany with how we are able to belong, to integrate. Like, I feel this is our responsibility, but also it can be difficult when I'm in community and I'm not welcome in. Like media, it's make it more difficult for us every day. In one day, we are very welcome refugee, and the second day, go back home. How am I able to integrate when you are doing like this? I cannot control media here. It's a free country, freedom of media. But also we need to have our participation to push on the media, to speak, this cannot happen. We need to give them the possibility to integrate here. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Nice shot.
Hi. Oh, wow. It actually works. I kind of want to build off of what you said about class. And then, I'm sorry, I'm really bad at names. What you said, you were working at socially engaged anthropologists about neoliberalism. And I'm not in a position to offer a solution to the problem, but I kind of wanted to, as we're going to go on and talk about institutions, I wanted to ask a question. I'd be interested to know what the panelists think. I mean, I think I appreciate what everyone's saying, and it's super interesting, but what I always wonder is how much does individual action matter when we're working under institutions that at the end of the day adopt neoliberal framework and neoliberal policies that, as a lot of people said, are exclusionary for classes and really uplift certain classes of people. I went to a university in Canada, I went to McGill, and is where everyone who goes there happens to have a lot of money. And so in that sense is not inclusionary of people who just can't afford to go to university. And so I wonder how much individual tolerance matters when there's an economic framework that promotes individualism and that promotes division based on of your economic position. Yeah, and that's just...
Can we get the answer, and then we get the last voice from the audience. First, the answer, please, to her question.
Well, I also went to McGill. And...
So that means you also have a lot of money.
That's what I want to bring up.
Yeah.
I think we have a view that what you just said, you went to McGill, you had to have a lot of money to go to McGill. I would disagree with that. I would disagree with it quite strongly. But I'd first of all put it in the context of all the universities. If we establish that universities are free, I think it would be a wonderful thing to do. We haven't done that. So to pick out McGill, I mean, you're discounting the huge programs at McGill that bring in students from all over the country who are disadvantaged, all over the world, who need scholarships to come to McGill. So I think we have to be careful about kind of blaming institutions that are trying to make these changes today, even though we both went to a very good school. We have to keep that in mind. But until we're able to make university education universal, I think we have to consider what it takes to eliminate fees, to broaden. The universities are working very hard on this, I believe, in Canada, and I dare say in the rest of the world. But it's not something you can just legislate into action. It's a very expensive task, educating beyond the high school level. In fact, for a lot of the world, educating beyond the elementary school level is an expensive task.
Thank you. The last question.
Okay, my name is Barbara Wenders. I came from North Rhine-Westphalia in Germany, from the town of Münster, from My school is Primus-Schule, Primus school. I'm a teacher, 2 years retired. So I wished you could change my daily experiences I had in doing this work. I learn everything about what we talk about by doing it every day with children. And I think it's such a treasure, such a gift to have the chance to get in contact, to come in real relationship. You can't lose fear if you don't have the possibility to become a relationship to children or people who are quite different, very, very different. And it costs a lot of money to raise up children who are poor. In my school, we are a school for all, and it's a Schulversuch, it's the German word. From grade 1 to grade 10, we would like to continue till grade 13. And my opinion is that if we had a school for all since kindergarten, we would have the chance of a better society who are not so divided. Our segregated system in Germany separates the society. And I can tell you the fear, so many people, so many parents have fear. Well, where is the best school for my child? No, this is not a good school. There are so many immigrants, oh my goodness. And I can tell you, you are so poor. You are, lose the best chance in your world, the best education for your child, if you put it away from these arrangements, from these colorful learning places. And I'm so thankful. I learn everything in my own practice. And now I need, what I want today, social media. Where should children learn this? To identify fake news. Where should they learn it? They have to learn it in school, but they don't in Germany. We have 20% of children aged of 15 who are not able to read, who are not able to identify fake news. And that's a very, that's worse. That's a catastrophe. But they don't have a lobby. They are the losers. So we have education winners and we have losers. That's normal. And this is the point, my very point. Please support schools who are good models for inclusion and don't stop it. So in North Rhine-Westphalia, maybe there is a new government and they say, away with this school. And that's not education, that's low education if politicians do so. And the last example I can give you, they closed a school, and the reason for closing the school was there are not enough children, not enough high-gifted children. So they closed a school with the opinion for this rest of students, it isn't worthwhile.
So we have an educate. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
There should be a solution when it comes to education. We had more than one example. What else should be done? It's a very multicultural gathering. We want to end. You cannot hear me?
After what she said, I have to say something.
You want to say something? Okay.
Here.
I'm so glad you talked about public education, because the secret to Canada's overall success as an immigrant nation, and we are a success on the whole, is that we have free public education and that it is excellent. My husband and I, and we have achieved something in our lives, went to public education all our lives. I went to schools in which children didn't have more than one pair of shoes, in which we had to be examined to have lice in our hair once a week, because that's what you do in public schools, because we went with everybody. I have never regretted going to school with everybody in all my life. And I think it is the value of education and of people being able to come to a country and their children are immediately put into a context where they learn the English. And in Canada, we always say the children teach the English to their parents. Often the parents are so busy working, the mothers are often at home and quite isolated. But the children, certainly in doing political campaigns, when you knocked on doors, and he knows that, he represented a hugely immigrant riding, you knocked on doors to talk to people about voting, and their little child of 7 would interpret to their parents, you know, this is the Liberal candidate, and he speaks French, and he's going to do such and such. And all of that, you cannot have a successful immigrant country where immigrants have success for their futures if you do not have well-funded public education that doesn't cost anybody anything.
Again, an emphasis on education. What else should be done when it comes to individuals, institutions, to law? And end optimistic so we get the energy out of the room together.
It's such an easy answer.
Oh, okay.
It's exactly what our former Governor General just said. You make it the law, you put in public education, everybody goes, nobody pays, and if you want to go to some school where you have to pay, be my guest. But look what happened in Afghanistan. I mean, we had such a lack of education that the people were unable to make up their own minds about what they wanted to happen in their own tribe, their own region, their own country. But you give people, look at Malala Yousafzai, it's a perfect example. Here's a kid who wanted to go to school to learn to think for herself, and they didn't want her to think for herself, so they tried to eliminate her. Thank God she survived the attack of the Taliban, and she started a movement around the world. I mean, these things are key to a functioning society.
Thank you. Düzen?
I also think it's all about education. And in my personal life, being part of education was my personal way to freedom, was my life-changing moment, because my mother is illiterate, she cannot write and read, and my father also left school about 4 years, and that was a big challenge for us. And my life-changing moment was in 2014 when I left my secure life in Germany and went to Iraq to tell the story of my people, the Yazidi people, who no one was interested in since the day that ISIS came and raped our women. And my education as a journalist made that possible. So the fact that I was Yazidi and had this meaning and purpose in my life, that I ever wanted to tell the story of my people, and the fact that fear was no option, made it possible that ongoing genocide, which is one of many, have been recognized here in Germany and in the world. And therefore, I want to be optimistic for realize how powerful we can be if we believe in ourselves.
Thank you. On the institution level?
You know, I have two major ideas. The first one, I will call it the Canadian solution. You know, really, I think it is universally accepted now that Canada is the best in the world. So let me declare that.
The what? Yeah?
The best in the world. The Canadians are the best in the world. They are loved. Their experience is amazing. And this is the second time I participate in 6 Degrees. I thank Adrian and John. But can we take this 6 Degrees or something similar to it everywhere? You know, really from my own personal experience sitting with everyone, listening to a lot of things, a lot has come to my mind. But this kind of forum and similar forums should become something that we have it in every town hall, we have it in every TV screen, and that we could really participate. And this is the alliance that John is speaking about. That is very important. This is a manifestation of the will of the majority, which might not have the experience to share. The second one, we should not have compromises when it comes to the issues of integrity and the issues of inclusion, because I have spoken to a lot of politicians in the West who are sad that they missed the opportunity of being elected because they stood for moral and value-centered approach. But always I'm telling them, this is short-living period. But once you start accommodating the populist right-wing politics in your discourse, as we have seen it here in Germany, we have seen it everywhere else in Europe, it is difficult to come back because slowly you are raising the threshold of public perception about many ideas and ideologies, which makes you a target in the future. We don't have to compromise. I call upon media, politicians, people who have influence, people who have voice, not to be captivated or not to compromise with populism and right-wing politics, and to have a steadfast perception until next phase starts, which as I predict, from 5 to 10 years, which we will eventually go through this.
Thank you.
Yes, schools are crucial, and I write a lot about how I think the steep decline of Swedish school system is connected to the problems we're having. But I want to step back, because it's the end, and do a sort of bigger picture observation. Timothy Snyder, the historian, talks a lot about the politics of inevitability. The idea being that it's the kind of view that we have understood history, it's moving in a certain direction, there's not much to do about it, that's how it's going to go. Now, that's how he says, and I think it's right, that's how we were thinking not long ago about the end of history, right? Democracy, liberal democracy has won, it's all fine, we can lean back, it's going to be fine. Right, well, it didn't go so well, and now suddenly we have a new kind of politics of inevitability, which is, it's all a big, huge crisis, it's going to hell, democracy is going to go under, and, what can we do? We could just have panic and not do anything. That's a very dangerous way of thinking. These are both narratives, and I'm suspicious of narratives in general. I think it's really important to see that history is never inevitable. What will happen depends on what we do. Democracy will not go under unless a large part of the population just give up. We can have 25% right-wing extremism, populism in Sweden, but there is 75% people left, and we need to talk to them. So I think this kind of thing we need. We need to talk across borders, but we also need to talk and realize that it matters what we do to what happens.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. The conversation is continuing, and I think I had to, Adrian, right? No? I just end? Okay, I just end. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Jaafar. I want us to recognize Wadah, Düzen, Åsa, Sally, and of course Jaafar Abdul Karim for a marvelous first 360. Big round of applause for these idea generators. All right, stay with me, folks, for just a second. We now have a 15-minute coffee break, after which 3 concurrent exchange sessions will be beginning. Let me run through those for you. Here in this room, there'll be an awesome panel moderated by the lovely Marty Cates on art and activism, some of the discussions we've had this morning on culture, cultural production, narratives or the lack thereof. We'll get into the weeds on that. If you're interested in exploring that, please come back into this space. Upstairs in the Mozart Auditorium, our partners from the Bertelsmann Foundation are going to be leading a workshop on division and togetherness, an opportunity to get our hands dirty, to get practical. If you want to head in that direction, and please do, I think it's going to be a wonderful workshop. It's 2 floors above us. in the Mozart Auditorium. So for those of you who need to get caffeinated quick and grab a spot on the second floor in the Mozart Auditorium. And last, and I would say certainly not least, for those of you who want to continue the conversations we've begun in here, the coffee house session will begin in the foyer, moderated by yours truly. An opportunity for you to sit with other members of the 6 Degrees family today and to take a deep dive into some big issues and hopefully come up with some big ideas. It's chaotic, it's fun, we have some awesome facilitators, there's limited room, so if you're interested, grab a seat at one of the tables marked out in the hallway. It's always a good time. Folks, caffeinate for 15 minutes, 11:30 we have to start sharp. Thank you very much, everyone.